What happens when one of Hollywood's biggest action stars faces off against one of television's most controversial hosts in a battle of wits that nobody saw coming? Well, you're about to find out because Arnold Schwarzenegger just delivered the performance of a lifetime, and it wasn't in a movie theater. Before we dive into this explosive confrontation that has the internet buzzing, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below because you're going to want to discuss this one with everyone. The morning started like any other day on The View. The cameras rolled, the audience applauded, and Joy Behar sat at the table with that familiar smirk she's known for. But today was different. Today, Arnold Schwarzenegger was the guest, and what was supposed to be a simple promotional interview for his latest fitness initiative quickly turned into something much more intense. "So, Arnold," Joy began, leaning back in her chair with an air of superiority, "you're here talking about fitness and health. But isn't it a bit hypocritical coming from someone who used to pump his body full of steroids?" The audience fell silent. Even the other hosts seemed taken aback by the directness of the question. Arnold, sitting across from her, maintained his composure. But you could see something shift in his expression. "Joy," Arnold replied, his Austrian accent cutting through the tension, "I think you have your facts wrong. I have always been transparent about my bodybuilding career, and I have never hidden anything from the public. But more importantly, I am here today to talk about helping people get healthy, not to discuss things from 40 years ago." Joy wasn't backing down. She leaned forward, her voice taking on that condescending tone that her critics know all too well. "But Arnold, don't you think people deserve to know the truth? I mean, you're sitting here telling Americans how to live their lives when your own past is questionable at best." "Questionable?" Arnold's eyebrows raised slightly. "Joy, with all due respect, I think you are trying to create drama where there is none. I came here to discuss my new program that helps children learn about nutrition and exercise. I thought that was what we were going to talk about." "Well, I think our viewers are smart enough to connect the dots," Joy shot back, her voice getting sharper. "You made millions off your physique, then you went into politics, now you're back trying to make money off fitness again. It's all very convenient, don't you think?" The other hosts exchanged uncomfortable glances. This wasn't the direction anyone had expected the interview to go. Arnold's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained calm. "Joy, I'm going to stop you right there," Arnold said, holding up his hand. "First of all, this program I am talking about is completely free. No one pays anything. We are giving away educational materials to schools across America. So your assumption about me making money is wrong." "Oh, please," Joy interrupted, rolling her eyes dramatically. "Nothing is ever really free, Arnold. There's always an angle, always a way to profit. That's how Hollywood works, that's how politics works, and apparently that's how your fitness empire works too." Arnold's face was beginning to show signs of frustration, but he maintained his diplomatic approach. "Joy, I understand you may be skeptical, but I would appreciate it if you would let me explain the program before you dismiss it entirely." "I'm not dismissing anything," Joy replied defensively. "I'm asking the hard questions that journalists are supposed to ask. Isn't that what you'd want? Or would you prefer we just throw you softball questions like some other shows might do?" "Hard questions are fine," Arnold responded, his voice getting slightly firmer. "But attacking my character and making false accusations is not journalism, Joy. That is something else entirely." The audience began to murmur among themselves. You could feel the energy in the studio shifting as viewers realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. "I'm not attacking anyone," Joy said, her voice rising slightly. "I'm simply pointing out inconsistencies. You come on television shows, you give speeches, you write books, all about success and achievement. But you never really address the elephant in the room." "And what elephant is that, Joy?" Arnold asked, leaning forward now, his patience clearly wearing thin. "The elephant that you built your entire career on artificial enhancement, then moved into politics where you had to make decisions about drug policy, and now you're back telling people how to be healthy naturally. Don't you see how that might seem hypocritical to some people?" Arnold's hands were now clasped together on the table, and his knuckles were slightly white. "Joy, you are making a very serious accusation without having all the facts. You are also ignoring decades of my work in public service, my environmental initiatives, my work with children, and focusing only on creating controversy." "I'm focusing on the truth," Joy retorted. And the truth is that you've reinvented yourself multiple times when it was convenient, and now you're doing it again. The truth, Arnold said, his voice now carrying an edge that hadn't been there before, is that you are more interested in creating headlines than having a real conversation about helping people. The studio audience was completely quiet now, hanging on every word. The other hosts looked like they wanted to intervene but weren't sure how. That's rich coming from someone who's made a career out of creating headlines, Joy fired back. Between the movies, the affairs, the politics, the comeback attempts, you're hardly someone who shies away from attention. And that's when something snapped. Arnold's face changed completely, his diplomatic mask finally slipping away. Arnold's eyes flashed with an intensity that reminded everyone in that studio exactly who they were dealing with. This wasn't just an actor or a former politician sitting across from Joy Behar anymore. This was a man who had conquered every field he'd entered, and he was done being disrespected. "You know what, Joy?" Arnold said, his voice dropping to a dangerously calm tone. "I have been sitting here for 10 minutes listening to you attack my character, question my motives, and spread false information about me, and I have been nothing but respectful to you." Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Arnold held up his hand firmly. "No, you have had your turn to talk. Now it is my turn," he continued, his accent becoming more pronounced as his emotions rose. "You want to talk about reinventing myself? Let me tell you something about reinvention. When I came to America, I had nothing. I could barely speak English. I slept on a couch. But I had a dream, and I worked every single day to make that dream a reality." The studio was dead silent. Even Joy, for once, seemed at a loss for words. "You sit here in your comfortable chair, making millions of dollars a year to give your opinions," Arnold continued, his voice getting stronger with each word. "But what have you actually built? What have you actually created? What have you contributed to make the world a better place?" Joy's face was turning red. "Now wait just a minute, Arnold. I've been a journalist for decades. I've interviewed presidents, I've covered major stories, I've informed the public about important issues." "Have you?" Arnold shot back immediately. "Or have you just created controversy and division, because from where I am sitting, all you do is tear people down instead of building them up?" The other hosts were exchanging looks of complete shock. This was not going according to anyone's script. "I don't have to sit here and listen to you lecture me about journalism," Joy snapped, her composure completely gone now. "You're an actor, Arnold. You pretend for a living. Don't sit there and tell me about real work." Arnold's laugh was cold and humorless. "Pretend for a living? Joy, I won the Mr. Olympia competition 7 times. I built a real estate empire before I ever made a movie. I served as governor of California for 8 years. I have started multiple businesses and foundations. What exactly have you done besides talk?" "I've informed the American people," Joy replied defensively. "I've held powerful people accountable." "Accountable?" Arnold's voice was rising now. "You mean like you are trying to do to me right now? By making false accusations and twisting facts to fit your narrative?" Joy leaned forward aggressively. "I haven't made any false accusations. Everything I've said is public knowledge." "Public knowledge?" Arnold slammed his hand on the table, causing everyone to jump. "You accused me of being hypocritical about steroids when I have been more transparent about that topic than almost any athlete in history. You accused me of profiting from this program when it costs me money to run it. You accused me of avoiding hard questions when I have answered every single one honestly." The audience was completely captivated. This was live television at its most raw and unfiltered. "You know what your real problem is, Joy?" Arnold continued, not giving her a chance to respond. "Your problem is that you cannot stand to see people succeed. You cannot stand to see people overcome obstacles and achieve their dreams. So instead of celebrating success, you try to tear it down." Joy's voice was shaking now with anger. "That is completely unfair and untrue. I celebrate success all the time." "When?" Arnold challenged immediately. "Give me one example from this show where you have celebrated someone's genuine achievement without trying to find something negative about it." Joy opened her mouth but no words came out. She looked around at her co-hosts for support, but they were all staring at the table uncomfortably. "I thought so," Arnold said, his voice dripping with disappointment. "You know, when I agreed to come on this show, I thought I was going to have an intelligent conversation about helping children learn healthy habits. Instead, I find myself sitting across from someone who would rather attack and belittle than have a real discussion. I was trying to have a real discussion, Joy protested weakly. I was asking legitimate questions. Legitimate questions? Arnold's voice was incredulous. Joy, you started this interview by calling me a hypocrite. You have spent the entire time trying to make me look bad, instead of talking about the topic I came here to discuss. How is any of that legitimate journalism? The tension in the studio was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The audience was completely silent, watching this confrontation unfold with rapt attention. Look, Arnold, Joy said, trying to regain some composure. Maybe we got off on the wrong foot here. Why don't we start over and talk about your program? Arnold stared at her for a long moment, then shook his head slowly. No, Joy. We are not starting over. Because this is exactly who you are. This is your pattern. You attack people, then when they defend themselves, you try to act like the reasonable one. Joy's face was flushed with embarrassment and anger. I don't attack people. I ask tough questions. That's my job. Your job? Arnold's voice was filled with disbelief. Your job is supposed to be informing people and having meaningful conversations. But instead, you use your platform to spread negativity and create conflict where none needs to exist. I don't create conflict, Joy said defensively. I expose the truth. The truth? Arnold laughed bitterly. The truth is that you have been trying to embarrass me since the moment I sat down. The truth is that you don't care about my program or helping children. The truth is that all you care about is getting ratings by creating drama. The studio audience began to murmur among themselves, and you could sense that public opinion in the room was shifting heavily in Arnold's favor. That's not true, Joy said, but her voice lacked conviction now. It is not true? Arnold leaned forward intensely. Then tell me, Joy. What question have you asked me about the actual program? What have you asked about the curriculum, the schools we are working with, the children we are trying to help? What have you asked about anything other than trying to make me look bad? Joy sat there silently, unable to come up with an answer. Exactly, Arnold said, sitting back in his chair. Because you do not care about any of that. You only care about creating your little controversy so you can feel important. The silence that followed Arnold's challenge was deafening. Joy sat frozen in her chair, her mouth slightly open, searching for words that simply wouldn't come. The other hosts looked like they wanted to disappear into their seats, and the studio audience was so quiet you could hear the cameras humming. This is exactly what I am talking about, Arnold continued, his voice now carrying the full weight of his frustration. You have no answer. Because deep down, you know I am right. You came into this interview with an agenda to attack me, and you do not care about anything else. Joy finally found her voice, but it was shaky and defensive. Arnold, I think you're being overly sensitive here. This is how interviews work. We ask challenging questions. Arnold's response was immediate and devastating. Overly sensitive? Joy, I have been challenged by some of the best in every field I have ever entered. I have faced criticism from movie critics, political opponents, business competitors, and fitness experts. But what you are doing here is not challenging questions. This is character assassination disguised as journalism. The audience began to shift in their seats, some nodding in agreement with Arnold's assessment. You could feel the energy in the room completely turning against Joy. I resent that accusation, Joy said. But her voice lacked any real conviction. I'm a professional journalist with decades of experience. Professional? Arnold's tone was incredulous. A professional journalist would have done their homework. A professional journalist would ask informed questions. A professional journalist would be interested in the story, not in creating a spectacle. One of the other hosts, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the interview, tried to intervene. Maybe we should take a commercial break and come back to discuss the fitness program. But Arnold held up his hand. No. We are going to finish this conversation right now. Because I think the audience deserves to understand what really happens behind the scenes of television shows like this. Joy's eyes flashed with anger. What are you implying, Arnold? I am not implying anything, Joy. I am stating it directly, Arnold replied, his voice steady and powerful. "You had your producers research negative stories about me before this interview. You came in here with a predetermined narrative that I was somehow hypocritical or dishonest. You had no intention of having a fair conversation about helping children get healthy." The accusation hung in the air like a bomb that had just exploded. Joy's face went pale, and she looked around nervously. "That's not true," Joy protested, but her voice was barely above a whisper now. "It is not true?" Arnold challenged. "Then explain to me why your very first question was designed to attack my credibility. Explain to me why you have spent 15 minutes trying to tear me down instead of 5 minutes learning about a program that could help millions of children." The studio audience was now completely on Arnold's side. You could hear murmurs of agreement, and even some scattered applause. Joy tried to regain her composure. "Arnold, I think you're misunderstanding the role of journalism. We're supposed to ask the tough questions that others won't ask." Arnold's laugh was cold and bitter. "Tough questions? Joy, here is a tough question for you. When was the last time you used your platform to actually help someone, instead of tearing them down? When was the last time you focused on solutions instead of problems? When was the last time you built something up instead of trying to destroy it?" The question hit Joy like a physical blow. She sat there speechless, unable to provide an answer that would sound convincing to anyone in that room. "You want to know what the real tragedy is here?" Arnold continued, his voice now filled with genuine sadness rather than anger. "The real tragedy is that you have this incredible platform. You reach millions of people every day. You could use that influence to inspire people, to educate them, to help solve real problems. Instead, you choose to create conflict and spread negativity." Joy's voice was barely audible now. "I do try to help people." "Do you?" Arnold leaned forward. "Because right now, you had the opportunity to help millions of children learn about nutrition and exercise. You had the chance to discuss a program that could prevent childhood obesity and teach healthy habits. But instead, you chose to attack me personally. How does that help anyone?" The weight of Arnold's words was crushing. Even Joy's co-hosts were looking at her with expressions that seemed to say they agreed with Arnold's assessment. "I think our viewers are intelligent enough to want both sides of the story," Joy said weakly, making one last attempt to defend her approach. Arnold's response was swift and final. "Both sides of what story, Joy? The story of a free program designed to help children? What is the other side of that? That helping kids be healthy is somehow bad? That teaching nutrition is controversial? What exactly are you opposed to here?" Joy had no answer. She sat there, completely defeated, her usual confidence and aggression replaced by uncomfortable silence. Arnold stood up from his chair, his imposing presence filling the studio. "You know what? I think I have made my point here. I came on this show to talk about helping children, but instead I have spent my time defending myself against baseless attacks. I think the audience can see exactly what happened here today." He began to remove his microphone, but then stopped and looked directly at Joy one more time. "Joy, I genuinely hope that someday you will use your platform for something positive instead of always trying to tear people down. You have the power to make a real difference in people's lives, but you have to choose to do it." With that, Arnold removed his microphone completely and walked off the set, leaving Joy and the other hosts sitting in stunned silence. The audience erupted in applause, not for the show,